Hey guys, Kev here, and I want to do some rapid reviews. So the first one here is the Aurora Knife and Tool Truffle. So this is a Kickstarter knife that did very well. It closed up on the 4th of September, so it is closed. I apologize for that, but you've probably seen this knife before. I did an unboxing on this knife, and I think the design overall is really cool. I do have some sort of QC type concerns on this knife. I am going to go ahead and assume they're all going to be corrected in production. I did ask Aurora Knife and Tool that. It's only been a day and a half. I haven't received a response yet. That's not a big deal. But hopefully, you know, they respond and say, yes, they're all going to be taken care of. If I hear back and that's not the case, I'll do an addendum or add something in the comments. But let's assume all of these things I'm about to mention are taken care of, okay? First off, the clip, we know already from the paperwork that they are updating the clip. So it will not be sitting in these wire slots, I believe, or they're going to clean these up a little bit. They're not doing any kind of wire clip, so they're going only milled. So I believe they're changing that so it sits in and looks a little bit cleaner there. They're changing the design on the clip just slightly to come down a little thinner here, and I believe add a little bit more ramp so it aesthetically looks better, which I think is a great idea. And then they're adding a filler tab over here on the left side. So I do want to shout them out for having a lefty option on this knife. A lot of times, you know, companies don't, you know, hook the lefties up, and they did do that. And I think with this lock, which is the key feature of this knife, it's very ambidextrous, so it's smart to have the lefty options. So shout out to them. But yeah, the clip filler tab will be added in production. The other issue I have is this detent lash is very pronounced. You can see it right there. You can hear it. And I believe this is causing some other things in the action. Like when I'm pushing the button, I don't know, it's a little bit like squeaky. I don't want to use the word rickety because that sounds terrible, but kind of loosey-goosey a little bit. And I think maybe this knife just has been passed around a lot and it needs to be taken care of. I mean, taken apart and maybe maintenanced a little bit. Maybe there's something with the roundhouse lock, that arm or whatever they call it, leg, that needs to be adjusted or cleaned, or I don't know what it could be, right? It is a button design in general, so there could be something to that. Or perhaps that's just how the lock is. Maybe that's a side effect of this specific lock, is it's a little squeaky, sort of mushy, you know? So it's just, I don't know. It feels a little bit loosey when I'm playing with it here. And I do have the pivot tight. I just checked it because the centering is also off on this knife. It was a little bit more off to this side, and I was able to kind of push it and tighten it and get it to come a little bit closer to center. Again, I assume that will be addressed in production. So those are my sort of gripes with the QC, the build quality of this knife, because that's an important factor. I mean, we're talking about an OEM that I've never heard of, that a lot of you have probably never heard of. I hear that it's an OEM that big companies have used, so, you know, they've probably done a lot of work. But, you know, it's good to take a look at their build and everything. And again, they're prototyping it. So they're doing their due diligence by making prototypes. That's not happening all the time right now. A lot of companies are doing knives and doing pre-orders without prototypes, which is insane in my opinion. But so those are my little issues with it. And again, we're going to assume they're all taken care of unless I say something about that, okay? Personal preference issues. I wish the jimping was just more aggressive all around. It's just a little bit soft in all areas and lacking here. I wish it would go around the flipper tab. Do I have something that would show that? I do not. So, yeah. And then the front flipper, same thing. It's kind of soft. It's not really aggressive. So I'd love to see that be a little bit more on the aggressive side there when it comes to the jimping. The detent is also on the light side. If you know, I think one of the points of this design is it has a liner. It is using a, as far as I can tell, a conventional liner lock, sort of backwards, but it has a detent ball on it, and I'm assuming it drops into a detent hole, and that's what gives you the detent instead of a spring, like a normal button lock type mechanism, right? Like this is a button lock. There's a spring in there, and that's what gives you the detent. But even this one with the spring has a little bit more oomph to it than this one does. So personally, I would take advantage of that fact and have a nice stiff detent on this puppy, you know? But, like I said, personal preference, because not everybody is into that. So those are the overall things for me that I would love to see adjusted a little bit, okay? Now, the design is very cool, very unique in my opinion. I haven't seen much like this, I don't think. I mean, if we're talking about vibes, like what vibes does it give me? This does not mean I'm saying it looks like anything. Like I just said, I think it's unique. The pivot area kind of gives me a little bit of chamois vibes. You know, that nice rounded, contoured sort of look here with the huge pivot that really just sticks out to me as a chamois feature, because they're one of the only ones that do that huge pivot. And then when it's open with the Tanto, I don't know, maybe a little bit of Ferrum Forge or something. I don't know. But again, I think it's super unique, which is cool. It's good size knife. I think for most people are going to be happy with this size knife, you know. I have a large glove size hand. I still have some room, so XL should fit on here just fine. You might be getting a little tight on a 2XL because you have that hook here, and you don't have any way to choke up. I always love to choke up, so I would love to see that. But you have a beautiful hollow grind. This is one of the standouts on this knife, is this grind. They did an excellent job. It is stupid thin down here. Honestly, when you see this knife on paper or in video or whatever, I don't think you expect this blade. So when you guys get these and you get it in hand, you're gonna understand, like, damn, that's just razor thin down here. It almost feels like Jack Wolf styles levels of thin. And then I believe this is flat, but again, it feels super thin out to that out to the edge there. The spine is nicely done. I mean, it's not like crazy or, you know, crowned or anything, but it's just nicely done. No jimping. I would love to see some jimping on this knife just to get a little bit more grip. Friday Night Gas Station is pretty comfortable because you have this landing spot right here, so you can save your Slurpee there. Yeah, the ergos overall are really neutral, you know, and that clip's nice and flat, so it feels good in the hand. Now, you know, it's questionable on the lock if you could disengage it or have any issues with that. I don't think naturally that would happen, but they do state in their paperwork that this is meant for light duty and it should not be used for hard duty tests. And I think, you know, they're basically saying this is a EDC fidget knife. You know, that was the purpose here, was to have it be a really fidgety knife that you can also cut some stuff with, you know. And in that aspect, it is fidgety. You know, you have this sort of button lock on the front pivot sort of situation. Again, it's not a button lock, it's a roundhouse lock. It has a little arm, and when you push the button, the arm pushes this liner that way, which is interesting. And then the knife can close. So it essentially functions like a button lock if you're just looking at it that way. Right-handed, you know, you got a nice flipper. You have the front flipper. You do have to stay down on it because if you come up where, for me, naturally, I want to be here, and I'm just going to get crushed every time by that flipper tab. So I have to come lower than I want to, and honestly, it's a little awkward to get enough pressure to flick it all the way out. You know, you have to get just the right spot. So that's a downside for me, but I think folks with larger hands are going to just naturally have a great grip on this. But maybe smaller-handed folk, you know, large and lower, might have a little bit of issue with that front flipper. But if they could make it a little more aggressive, it might be a little easier to, you know, operate anyway, right? And then lefty, the front flipper works, or sorry, the flipper tab works fine. I do wish the jimping was more aggressive and the detent was stronger, because I think if the detent was dialed in, then this would start to feel a little bit too unjimped, because it's very smooth. You almost don't even feel the jimping when you're using it, because the jimping's here and you're kind of here, you know. It does have a hole for deployment, and it works. It works well. Again, a stronger detent I think would really improve the feel on this guy. You want that resistance, especially with a hole this long, because down here you get sort of a weaker detent feel, right? It's much easier to break it because you're that far away from the pivot, where up here you're close to the pivot, you know. I actually think it's easier to flick and everything left-handed. Maybe that's because I'm left-handed, but right-handed I tend to like be on the lock, which is obviously not good. But I think that could just be because I'm left-handed. Maybe you righties are doing this stuff, you know, where you stick your fingers out and say, "What up, fuck?" You know, and flick it. Yeah. So, them's my thoughts on this guy. It's just got a little bit of too much loosey-goosey going on. But that's prototyping for you. So, again, assuming everything cleans up nicely. And, you know, I feel comfortable giving my, you know, full-blown honest critique on this one because it did so well on Kickstarter. It funded, it's done, right? Like, it's not done, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I'm not hurting the sales on this right now, and I just want to, you know, I just want to put it out there that I think it's really cool, but it just needs to be cleaned up a little bit, you know, and I'm sure that's going to happen. So I'm going to show about it. Anyway, that is the Truffles from Aurora Knife and Tool. Really appreciate them sending this my way to check out, and can't wait to hopefully check out a production one down the line and see how well they really did come out. And, you know, being an OEM that I've never heard of before or used, you know, I do work with OEMs a lot. I am really interested to see how they come out. So, there you go. The next one I kind of showed you here is the Kaiser Hyper. So, I'm hanging on to this one a little longer. Normally, I would pass them around after my review, but I'm waiting on them to send me, I believe, a lefty clip. I think that is coming, because this knife does not come with a left-handed clip, which is very odd to me. It has the slot, but it does not come with the lefty clip in the package, so that's odd. The disassembly on it was a bit rough. You can watch my video on it. It's pretty intricate. You got to pop pieces out, and there's a lot going on there. But I will say, in its favor, I got it back together perfectly. It is dead nut centered and still just as snappy as it was. And the action is literally perfect with no play on the skiffs I added. So, you know, maybe it's a little finicky on assembly, but who cares, right? Ultimately, I think it's a positive that you have cool features like swapping scales, and you can actually mix and match these pieces because these are separate. Very cool to me. This one's an S35VN. It comes in, I believe, an LMAX version and S35VN. I'm not sure if there's a 154 version as well. I'll link it down below. I do have an affiliate link with Kaiser, so it does help the channel if you guys use that. Help your boy out, you know what I mean? But I really like this knife. It just melted into my hand ergonomically from Jump Street, and that's the reason I really like this thing. It's fidgety, it's cool, it's a great size, but man, it just melts. It kind of reminds me of how I fell in love with the Mini Barber here. It just, that flat, it just perfectly lands into my hand, and I think they're a similar size. No? Okay. I really thought so. The Hyper's a bit bigger. So, there you go. Didn't realize that. But, again, you have that flat and then the little finger choil, and boom. It all just locks in to my hand perfectly. So, that's why it reminded me of it. I really like how it feels ergonomically back here and up here. So, the blade has been really good. I've opened packages. I've cut a lot of icy pops, and yes, I'm saying icy pops, those frozen treats. I've been kind of hooked on the DB's ones. Check them out, DEEBEES, and it's like fruit flavor, like real fruit icy pops. So they're a little, yeah, they're obviously better for you than just the straight sugar water ones. And I got them for my kid, and then I kind of got hooked on them. So, yeah, I've been cracking them open like crazy with knives. And it's been fun to kind of feel how each knife goes through that. Because it's ice, man. Ice is not, I don't think ice is super soft. Like, I think it can be tough on knives. I'm not sure. You guys tell me. But I've noticed some things with knives, you know, going through the icy pops. And this one is good. I haven't had any issues with it. You can get a good grip and then slice right through, you know. You have a nice tip here. It's got that sort of spearfoot blade that I really like, that Colin designs a lot. The studs are really well done. The spring is money. Just really well done. I really like the Hyper, guys. I know it's going to be hit or miss aesthetically for people, but I'm here to tell you the build, the quality, and just the knife in general are very, very cool. So that is the Kaiser Hyper. The next one's going to be the Riot Mini Crossroads. So I did end up getting an affiliate link and a discount code for you guys over at the Knife Joker. So Travis over there is a great dude, and he sent me a couple knives to check out. I have a video just on these two. And you can get 10% off your orders at the Knife Joker. And that works on every knife except for discontinued knives, which are already heavily, you know, discounted or whatever. So this knife right here is probably, you know, $300, $350, I don't know, something like that. And you can get 10% off. That's a good chunk when you think about it. So check out the link down below to the Knife Joker. Use the code LeftyTen. I believe it's LeftyTen when you check out. It's all linked down below, and you'll get a nice discount. And your boy will get a little incy-bincy bit of commission. And I get to check out cool knives. So this is the Mini Crossroads Kirby Lambert design. The original Crossroads was just a mammoth, in my opinion. Still not my favorite overall design. It's got a lot of kind of like squared look to it, if that makes sense. Like, it's sort of rounded, but then it's very, like, the edges are very square to me. So aesthetically, it's not as appealing to my eye as something like this that's very, you know, contoured and curved, and I don't know how to explain it better, but, you know. It's got a nice blade on it. Guess you'd call that a drop point, right? It's not really a spear point, but it's close to centered on that pivot. But these two don't align, so I would say it's a drop point. Nice belt satin grind from Riot, pivot collars. The inlays are exceptionally well done. Very cool details on how that was all done. You have a floating backspacer in what looks to be zirconium. The action is superb. Look at that cool little gap right there through the lock bar. And this flipper tab, the best flipper tab I've tried in a long time. And that's right after having the Euclid in that I loved the flipper tab on. But the way they jimped it, and the way the angle is, and the pressure, the detent's perfect, it just ignites. I mean, it really, it's, you know, it's just that clean pop. The acoustic is perfect. So all around, this you know, action just really hits the sweet spot for me. Like, I could do this all day, just popping that flipper tab. You guys know what I'm talking about when you get just the right combination of everything and it fires. Very cool. And then ergonomically, it actually does fit my large glove size hand pretty well. I do feel this little hump here a little bit, but it's pretty comfortable in the hand. No jimping there or anything, but I don't know if it's necessary. You can't choke up, you know, unless you do this, but that's kind of weird. So I think overall, if the design really catches your eye, it's extremely well made. I mean, we know that with Riot. And I love this flipper tab. Love the action. Just very, very cool. And then the other one he sent me was the Osier F22. And I've been on record saying the design on this doesn't really do it for me. I don't know what it is, that long, slender, just drop point look. I don't know. Just not for me. But I do love this bolster lock, or whatever we're calling this lock. I love the belt satin on it. The action on this is very addicting. It has the kickstop mechanism that's really cool. And I think 10% off this one is like, you know, 37 bucks or something, because they're pretty expensive. The D10 on this one is really good. Pops really well. The one thing I don't like about this particular knife, as much as a lot of kickstops, now I guess it is a theme with kickstops, to be honest, is you get that weird sound where it disengages, and that kickstop mechanism, which is the flipper tab slash stop pin, when it kind of breaks loose, you get this sound, and then when it hits, I don't know if you can hear it hitting on itself. You hear that? That, to me, sounds a little cheap. Does that make sense? Sounds a little rattly. And I don't personally like that very much. That's really the only gripe I have with the kickstop, because I love the kickstop. It's just such a sweet mechanism. Not having that flipper tab sticking out the front here, right? Usually getting a great detent. Just the way a kickstop mechanism breaks. It's really pronounced and fantastic on the Chavez knives. But this is fantastic. The Pena kickstop Apache is fantastic. And then you have just a nice slender knife, you know, so if it's your style, it's, again, really well made. Riot really doing a great job as usual here. I feel like they redeemed themselves a little bit with these two for me. I feel like lately things have been a little bit suspect from Riot. Not like bad, but just for them, you know what I mean? But these two are perfect in terms of like the build quality and everything. So yeah, this one's at Knife Joker and this one's at Knife Joker. Link down below if you want to check them out. Travis is a great dude. Just go peruse the website. If you're a Spyderco guy, he's got a lot of those. The Kaiser Hyper, and then we have the Aurora Knife and Tool Truffles here. So let me know which one's your favorite out of these four. And I would say out of the four, honestly, I'm going to go with the Hyper. Something about it. Sheep's foot, obviously, is the one thing that none of those have. And it just has a good spring on that button lock. Normally, I'm not a button lock guy. And this one perfectly fits my hand. And it's probably the smallest knife, and that's probably, you know, the biggest reason. But kind of interesting to think about. Out of these four, I would take the Kaiser Hyper. Which one would you take and why? Leave it down in the comments. Hit the like button, subscribe. Let me know if you have any questions. And I love you guys. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day. And I will catch you later.